Call this meeting of Lima City Council to order. We'll begin tonight's meeting with the invocation by Councilor Lowe, followed by the Pledge of Allegiance.
May we all bow our heads. Dear Lord, we thank you again this evening for giving us the opportunity to make the laws for the citizens of this great city. Lord, we ask that we have the mind of Jesus in us while we make these laws. We ask that you continue to wrap your arms around this city and continue to bless us. We thank you for everything that you've done thus far. We ask you to touch the administration and each councilman here and every individual that has come out this evening. Lord, we're here tonight and we're going to honor a special gentleman within this city, Lord. We know the great works that he's done, and we know the great family and legacy that he has left here. And Lord, we ask that you continue to touch them and bless their family also. In your Christ's Son, Jesus' name we pray, amen.
Amen. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Will the clerk call the roll?
Councilor Gordon.
Here.
Councilor McLean.
Here.
Councilor Lowe.
Here.
Councilor Crayer.
Here.
Councilor Adams.
Here.
Councilor Glenn.
Here.
Councilor Miles.
Here.
And Councilor Nixon.
Here. There are no amendments to tonight's agenda. Under privilege of the floor, we have Shatara Battle Milton. Shatara, if you come forward and state your name and address for the record, I would appreciate it. And I'll remind you that council rules allow for 3 minutes.
Okay.
Okay.
My name is Shatara Battle. I reside at 127 West 4th Street here in Lima, Ohio.
Thank you.
On February the 16th, the water company came out to my house to do some work and to restore water services. The employee, apparently he had shut the water off to go inside the house to check whatever he needed to check, their meter or whatever, and he left the water key in the driveway with no markings or no caution cones or anything like that. And we struck it with our vehicle, pulling into the driveway. He, usually when they come, they park on our side of the street, but this particular day he parked on the side of the street of the church. So I didn't even know that if he was at our house or not. I spoke to Mr. Caprella that day, and he told me what I needed to do as far as getting estimates and to turn them into him, which I did. We went and had a meeting in front of the board, and they sent us a letter that said that our insurance would cover the cost and they would pay the $500 deductible. But when we spoke to our insurance company, they do not want to cover the cost because we only had liability insurance on that day. And I'm stuck with a $2,900 bill from Tom All. I submitted 2 estimates and I took my car to the cheaper estimate, which was Tom All over Reineke, but I'm stuck with a $3,000 bill and about $2,200 in rental cars because my husband still has to continue to get to work and we still have to continue to get our children around. And I'm asking the council to, I guess, consider covering the cost for my car and my rental because it was a situation where we were not at fault and the city did not take the necessary precautions to ensure that people knew that they were working. And we've submitted estimates and pictures, and like I said, that day Mr. Caprella told us it would be handled and taken care of, and I just don't feel like that has happened.
Okay. Mr. Geiger?
Mr. President, what Ms. Battle just described is different than what my understanding of the description that took place at the claims hearing, specifically with respect to her insurance coverage. So with council's permission, we'll go back and revisit that issue. We have her contact information, and we'll go from there on a second look with that.
Okay. All right. Small Claims Advisory Committee will take another look.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. The consent calendar.
Mr. President,
Councilor Adams.
I move that item A be received, filed, and approved, and item B be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive, file, and approve item A and to receive and file item B. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 1.
From the Director of Community Development regarding legislation to place tax assessments.
Mr. President,
Councilor Craig?
I move that communication number 1 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 1. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 2.
From Chief Martin regarding honoring the late Chief William K. Davenport.
Mr. President,
Councilor Miles.
I move that communication number 2 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 2. Councilor Miles,
Collectively.
would you please amend your motion to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation?
I would like to change that to say that the, move that communication number 2 be received and filed, and any necessary legislation be prepared by the law director.
Second.
Thank you. The motion and the second then is that communication number 2 be received and filed, and the law director be authorized to prepare any necessary legislation. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Councilor Glenn.
the Chief Martin brought this to me, and I know he brought it to other city councils. It was so exciting, and I did that word like, yes, because he deserved that. Mr. Davenport, Chief Davenport, that's great. And he said it's going to be on the, it's not going to be inside the building, it's going to be in front of the building. Like, yes, that's so great. So Chief Martin, all the administration, great job getting this done. Appreciate it. Chief Martin today? Oh, back in the back, okay. Thanks, Chief.
Thank you, Councilor Glenn. Is there
Mr.
any
President,
further- Councilor Miles.
I also want to commend Chief Martin and his staff for having the, the idea to do this here. This is a great tribute to a great man that served in our community for many, many years. And from what I understand, and it was during my teenage years when he was in here. But from what I can remember, I always remember seeing a tall man that looked like he was a man with great stature here. And I just remember him throughout the community. And I just really appreciate the fact that we're recognizing and acknowledging and putting, again, like Mr. Glenn says here, on the outside so that it can be seen. You don't have to go inside the building to see this. It will be seen on the outside of the building for everybody to know that this is, in his recognition. So again, thanks to Chief Martin, thanks to the administration, and thanks to all who was involved in this process.
Thank you, Councilor Miles. Any further discussion? I just want to point out, because I know there are several members of the Davenport family here. Tonight, we're just receiving and filing this letter and authorizing the legislation. The actual resolution, Tony, will it be at our next meeting on the 22nd?
Depending on what legislation we actually need, I'll let Sally know.
Okay. Do you have the family's contact information?
I'm sure
Chief,
Chief
do you have it?
Martin does.
Okay.
Yeah.
And if it's not going to be on at the 22nd meeting, the clerk or the chief will let you know, okay? The motion's on the floor. All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 3.
From Chief Martin regarding legislation to enter into an agreement with Waterford Townhomes.
Mr. President,
Councilor Adams.
I move that communication number 3 be received, filed. Legislation is on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 3. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Councilor Adams?
I'd like to point out to those in attendance and to the community, this is a COP station that's going to be in the South End area at the Waterford Townhomes at 524 Hope Street. And I feel it's long overdue. I know when we first started this process of the COP stations, I inquired at the time, why the one on Kibbe? Well, that's where the pinpoint policing was directing them because of the numbers of the issues in my, immediate area of that area. So I am grateful that something's been worked out, that this business is working with the police, and I thank you for going. I know you had a couple other locations you were working with. I'm glad this one came forward, and it will be welcomed in the community. Thank you, Chief. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Adams.
Mr. President,
Counselor Glenn.
Yes, again, I'm gonna echo some of the words Ms. Adams said. We welcome you guys in, and I'm very excited about it, Ms. Adams. I know you are too, and that will be great, appreciated. We got good folks in that area, and very happy. They'll be glad to see this when they hear about this coming, because I know Ms. Adams has been working very hard on this to get this going, so thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Glenn. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 4.
From the Director of Utilities regarding legislation to enter into a contract for advanced metering project.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that communication number 4 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 4. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 5.
From the Director of Utilities regarding legislation to purchase a meter from Neptune Equipment Company.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that communication number 5 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 5. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
basically this is a meter that they use for the commercial use, and it's a $15,600 meter that we have to come to council because it's over their spending limit. That's all this is. They're going to collect the money from the user, and we're right back in business. We get it back, so that's all it is. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Counselor McLean. Is there any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 6.
From the Director of Utilities regarding legislation to pay the permit to install fee to the Ohio EPA.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that communication number 6 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 6. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 7.
From the Director of Utilities regarding legislation to amend Ordinance 4116.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that communication number 7 be received and filed.
Second.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 7. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 8.
From the Auditor regarding legislation to enter into a contract with Cintas.
Mr. President,
Counselor Adams.
I move that communication number 8 be received and filed. Legislation's on tonight's agenda.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 8. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 9.
From the Ohio Department of Rehabilitation and Correction notifying council of registering a composting site.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that communication number 9 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 9. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 10.
From the Ohio Division of Liquor Control regarding a transfer to Morinda Petroleum at 998 Bellefontaine Avenue.
Mr. President,
Counselor Adams.
I move that communication number 10 be received and filed, and the clerk authorized to file with no objections with the Ohio Division of Liquor Control.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 10 and to authorize the clerk to notify the Ohio Division of Liquor Control of no objections. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 11.
From the Director of Community Development regarding legislation to approve the minutes of the Tax Incentive Review Council.
Mr. President,
Councilor Craig.
I move that communication number 11 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 11. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Communication number 12.
From the Director of Public Works regarding legislation to enter into a contract with Fencing Contracting, Inc.
Mr. President,
Councilor Gordon.
I move that communication number 12 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 12. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 13.
From the Director of Public Works regarding legislation to purchase easements or accept donations.
Mr. President,
Councilor Gordon.
I move that communication number 13 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 13. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 14.
From the Director of Public Works requesting legislation to advertise for demolition of 1101 East Tippy Street.
Mr. President,
Counselor Adams?
I move that communication number 14 be received and filed, and that the law director be authorized to prepare the necessary legislation to comply with the request.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 14 to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Counselor Adams?
I'd like to thank Mr. Elstro and his staff for entering into some discussion with the owner of this property. It has been an issue that I have brought up over the years of serving, and I think other counselors have been contacted, Counselor Miles, and I welcome this action and look forward to seeing something being done with that location for the betterment of the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Counselor Adams. Is there any discussion? Any further discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Communication number 15.
From the Director of Public Works requesting legislation to purchase a vehicle for the street division.
Mr. President,
Counselor Gordon?
I move that communication number 15 be received and filed and authorize the law director to prepare any necessary legislation.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 15 and to authorize the law director to prepare the necessary legislation. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed? Motion carries. Communication number 16.
From the law director regarding legislation to authorize the initiation of legal procedures to acquire property.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that communication number 16 be received and filed.
Second.
The motion and the second is to receive and file communication number 16. Is there any discussion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? The motion carries. Next, we have reports of officials. Mr. Vince Ozier regarding the health and safety update.
Mr. President and council members, you should have a packet in front of you, I believe. We'll go through some slides here pretty quickly. Of course, like always, the packet looks like this. The first slide would just be total workers' compensation claims, and we keep that historically relatively flat. It's been the last few years as far as the total number of workers' compensation claims. But generally speaking, since the inception, at least of this report, the trend has been down, which is a positive thing. The next slide is just a indication of the current injury rate. And just to remind council, the injury rate is an indication of the number of employees per 100 that you would expect to have injured in a year, in a calendar year. So again, that trend is slightly down, which is a good thing. The next slide just shows the detail by department where those injuries are occurring, or at least by injury rate. And as is typical for this report, we see high numbers in the fire department and in the police department. Of course, in the police department, a lot of times that has to do with combative suspects or folks that are not always cooperative with police officers. And then in the fire department, many of those injuries occur on the scene of a fire or emergency call. The second part of the report is just kind of an overview of our healthcare costs for 2016. We had a significant spike in total expenditures in 2016 relative to 2015, just right at $1 million. 25% of that cost roughly was prescription drug claims that were up significantly, and then the rest was pretty much just regular medical claims. You'll see another slide that talks about employee contributions. You'll see again that trend is up. We're just right at $750,000 in total premium contributions by employees in 2016. The next slide is a combination bar graph that has a green shaded area at the bottom and what I at least would call a blue shaded area at the top. The blue area represents what the city's share of family coverage cost is per family coverage that we have, not actually per employee, but actually, yeah. And then the green part represents what the employee share of that cost is. And so the trend is up for both of those. Of course, we want to try to keep that under control as best we can. But as you can see, the employees are at least taking more and more responsibility for the cost of their health coverage. And then the last graph that I have in the packet is kind of, it's a blue and green line graph. It just tries to compare our cost growth trend with that of the national average, at least for employers our size in the Midwest. We're somewhat consistent with the growth rate trend, which is a good thing, although, as you can tell, in 2016, we've had a spike year, which is I mentioned earlier. And then as far as our strategy, as we go forward in future years, we want to continue to negotiate toward 15% contribution level for employees. And at least by the end of this year, we would expect that all employees would be contributing at least 13% of the cost of their premium or their health coverage. We'll continue to encourage greater participation in the city's wellness program. And then we're also working to get greater share of coinsurance costs by employees relative to what we've had at least in the past. So with that, I'll take any questions, if anybody's got any questions.
Mr. President.
Councilor Adams?
Mr. Roser, if you could go back to the injury rate.
Yes.
I know you flagged, the two departments, Lima Fire and LPD. I know those numbers are, high, but that's their history. One number at the bottom, I believe that's what, Utility Field Service Division?
That is correct.
That one jumped out at me.
Yeah, they didn't have a particularly good year. I mean, I think they had a total of 4 injuries that generated that, which isn't good, of course, but it's something that, it's something I'm sure the department's going to take a look at and try to work at improving. One of the reasons, obviously, we do this is to create awareness among department heads and supervisors, and so they can see kind of what their trend has been and where their opportunities for improvement are going to be. The other thing that I didn't mention that I should mention while I'm talking about the injury rate citywide, we had a total of 44 workers' compensation claims, as I mentioned before, that were allowed. 4 of those occurred in a 1-week period. When we had that icing event right before Christmas, we had 4 people in various places in the city slip and fall on the ice and get hurt. So that kind of caused our numbers actually to be worse than they otherwise would have, which was kind of unfortunate. But anyway, significant.
Thank you, Mr. President.
Okay. Councilor Adams?
Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Roser. Next, we have ordinance 8717.
Levying special assessments for property maintenance code charges on premises in the city of Lima, Ohio.
Mr. President,
Councilor Crear?
I move that ordinance 8717 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 8717 on its first reading. Any discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crear?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 8717 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 8817.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Cintas for the lease of work uniforms.
Mr. President,
Councilor Adams?
I move that ordinance 88-17 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 8817 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Will the clerk call the roll?
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crear?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 8817 has been passed by an 8-0 vote on its first reading. Ordinance 8917.
Authorizing the mayor to advertise for bids and enter into a contract for landscape repairs for the utilities department.
Mr. President,
Councilor McLean.
I move that ordinance 8917 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 8917 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President.
Councilor Lowe?
Yes, this ordinance that we're about to pass is a bid to go out to do the landscaping after the utilities department has maybe had to make a repair. curbside or on your property. I'm just praying and requesting that when we go for these bids, that we find someone within this city or this county and not keep outsourcing to other states. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Lowe. Is there any further discussion?
Mr. President,
Councilor Adams?
kind of on what Counselor Lowe just mentioned, I had a conversation with the deputy director last week on this, and because I asked the question, in the past, when there's been a water issue at a residence, and the city goes out there and they're in the right-of-way, and there's something wrong with the shut-off valve, the city takes the steps and replaces it, and then they backfill it with dirt and gravel. And I was always informed it was up to the resident to either put dirt there or and seed it. And I was asking the deputy director, is that going to change under this? And we're not going to go on private property, are we, to make any improvements?
We'll have the director answer that.
There you
Yeah.
go.
He's not here to answer that, but if we've done the dig up, even if it's on private property, we would go back and
Okay.
repair that. We also do the repairs in the right of way. And, you know, we do them maybe in the middle of the winter. And when we finish an excavation, usually we put stone in there so it don't settle over the winter. Then we go back spring, summer, fall, and get the stone out. And we have a contractor do it. We can't keep up with the number with existing crews and the equipment we have, but that's why we go out for contract. But anything we've dug up, we will fix.
Okay, great, thank you.
Mr. President,
Councilor Lowe?
if Ms. Adams is done.
Yes,
Okay. Yeah, back to you, Mike. What's the maximum time for waiting? Because I remember,
It varies.
okay, but see, when we as councilmen, when we get the calls.
We're getting
I'm putting
them,
you
we're
on the
getting them
spot.
now. People get anxious. Some people don't care if we ever come back and fix them. Some want them fixed yesterday. So as soon as we get them, you know, we've got a list and they're listed by time that the dig up occurred. So if you've got a specific one, give a call and, you know, we'll see, where it's at and how we can get out there. So, but we've got to advertise, award, but we're doing some ourselves right now to try to get the long-term ones.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Councilor Lowe. Is there any further discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crayer?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 8917 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9017.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a lease agreement with Waterford Town Homes.
Mr. President,
Councilor Adams.
I move that ordinance number 90-17 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 9017 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President.
Councilor Lowe?
Yes, if the chief could come forward, could you please let the residents know, or anyone that's watching this live, let them know what times this individual will be at the Waterford Homes? And is it jointly shared with another station? Because I hadn't heard anything about another officer.
Mr. President, currently the open office hours have not been determined yet for that. The substation will be the responsibility of Officer Corey Knopf, who also has the other Precinct 2 substation at Kibbe and Calumet. Though his times will be divided, we also do have, as I'm sure you're already well aware, other people, both with representatives of Crime Victim Services and Coleman's Behavioral Health Services, that help us to staff the open office hours. And we're also looking at possibilities of trying to find other volunteer sources in order to be able to fill those hours as well. Because we don't want the officer just spending all of his time in the office. In fact, quite the opposite. The less time the officer can spend in the office, the better. We want them out on the street interacting with the public, solving problems, and things of that nature. But at the same time, we want that substation to be a place where people within the neighborhood feel comfortable coming in and talking about the concerns that they have to someone that can get the appropriate information and make sure that it's addressed.
Thank you.
Chief? there any further discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crayer?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 9017 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9117.
Authorizing continuation of and amendments to the following enterprise zone and community reinvestment area agreements based on the recommendations of the Tax Incentive Review Council.
Mr. President,
Counselor Crayer.
I move that ordinance 9117 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to pass ordinance 9117 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crayer?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 9117 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9217.
Setting forth municipal services requiring zoning buffers and road maintenance as may be needed, and consenting to the proposed annexation of property owned by Maplewood MHC LLC, RCCC Limited, SEDC LLC, and WC Investments LLC, and declaring an emergency.
Mr. President,
Counselor Adams.
I move that ordinance 92-17 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to pass ordinance 9217 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Well, Counselor Adams is up here, so.
We're going to need an amendment,
Okay.
just to change the caption, because I inadvertently left in the reference to an emergency, so.
Oh, and declaring an, yes, and I read it.
Scribners.
Yeah, and a clean copy. I mean, amended to correct the caption and provide a clean copy.
Is it anywhere else? Just the caption, I didn't see anything else.
Mr. President,
Counselor Adams.
I move that ordinance 92-17 be amended by eliminating the last part of the and declaring an emergency, and to provide a clean copy.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to amend ordinance 9217 by striking the words "and declaring an emergency" out of the caption and authorizing a clean copy. Is there any discussion?
That would be on that amendment discussion?
Yeah, on the amendment.
Well, no, I don't have anything on the amendment, but
Okay. Let's vote on the amendment real
Okay.
quick. All those in favor of the amendment signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed, the motion carries. Counselor Adams.
yes, I just wanted to make mention,
She needs to restate the motion on the original as amended.
Mr. President,
Ms. Adams.
I move that ordinance number 92-17 be passed on its first reading as amended.
Second.
The motion, the second, is that ordinance 9217 be passed on its first reading as amended. Is there any discussion? Ms. Adams, go now.
Well, if I get interrupted again, I'm gonna have Sally read it again.
In total.
Yes.
We jump on it now.
You gotta get it right, I understand. No, I wanted to make mention that the county commissioners have called a meeting June 13th at 1 p.m. In their chamber to meet on this. The public's been notified at budding properties in Lima and also in Bath, so just wanted to have that out there. 1 o'clock, June 13th.
Very good. Is there any further discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crayer?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 9217 has been passed on its first reading as amended by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9317.
Authorizing the mayor to request proposals and enter into a contract for an advanced metering infrastructure project.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that ordinance 9317 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion, the second, is to pass ordinance 9317 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President,
Mr. McLean.
For all you out there that don't know what this is our new meters that we're going to do to hopefully read remotely for the water meters, so we don't have to work on trying to shut off meters that are 25 years old. And the meters that are out there right now are at least 25 years old, so they're way beyond their life. And this is going to change the outlook on how they can read those meters in the future and shutting water off and on with the same instance. So, big project, and it's going to take a while to get done. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor McLean. Is there any further discussion? Will have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe.
Yes.
Counselor Crayer.
Yes.
Counselor Adams.
Yes.
Counselor Glenn.
Yes.
Counselor Miles.
Yes.
Counselor Nixon.
Yes.
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor McLean.
Yes.
Ordinance 9317 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9417.
Amending to ordinance 4116.
Mr. President,
Councilor McLean.
I move that ordinance 9417 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 9417 on its first reading. Is there any discussion?
Mr. President.
Councilor McLean.
These are all, some of these that I want to talk about, but basically this is going to check for, when we put the big tank out in Simmons Field, we have to have some rock underneath there, so we have to make sure that that's, how far we have to go down and check that out. So that's what this is about. It's a big project again. It's about a little over $1 million to start with, so this is nothing to sneeze about, but it's something we have to do to make sure it's stable. So thank you.
Thank you, Mr. McLean. And it's all part of the
EPA mandated.
EPA agreement with us. It's been a project for a long time.
Yeah.
Is there any further discussion? All those, I'm sorry, I'll have the clerk call the roll on this one.
Counselor Lowe.
Yes.
Counselor Crayer.
Yes.
Counselor Adams.
Yes.
Counselor Glenn.
Yes.
Counselor Miles.
Yes.
Counselor Nixon.
Yes.
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor McLean.
Yes.
Ordinance 9417 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9517.
Authorizing the auditor to make payment to the State of Ohio Environmental Protection Agency.
Mr. President,
Councilor McLean.
I move that ordinance 9617 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
Thank you.
It's 95, so I'm sorry, I'm ahead of myself.
Second.
9517.
Motion the second is to pass ordinance 9517 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe.
Yes.
Counselor Crayer.
Yes.
Counselor Adams.
Yes.
Counselor Glenn.
Yes.
Counselor Miles.
Yes.
Counselor Nixon.
Yes.
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor McLean.
Yes.
Ordinance 9517 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9617.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Neptune Equipment Company.
Mr. President,
Councilor McLean.
I move that ordinance 9617 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 9617 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe.
Yes.
Counselor Crayer.
Yes.
Counselor Adams.
Yes.
Counselor Glenn.
Yes.
Counselor Miles.
Yes.
Counselor Nixon.
Yes.
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor McLean.
Yes.
Ordinance 9617 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9717.
Authorizing the mayor to accept donations and/or purchase permanent easements for the 2017 various storm sewer improvements project.
Mr. President,
Councilor McLean.
I move that ordinance 9717 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 9717 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? I'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe.
Yes.
Counselor Crayer.
Yes.
Counselor Adams.
Yes.
Counselor Glenn.
Yes.
Counselor Miles.
Yes.
Counselor Nixon.
Yes.
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor McLean.
Yes.
Ordinance 9717 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9817.
Authorizing the mayor to enter into a contract with Fencing Contracting, Inc.
Mr. President,
Councilor Gordon.
I move that ordinance 9817 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 9817 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Will have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe.
Yes.
Counselor Crayer.
Yes.
Counselor Adams.
Yes.
Counselor Glenn.
Yes.
Counselor Miles.
Yes.
Counselor Nixon.
Yes.
Counselor Gordon.
Yes.
Counselor McLean.
Yes.
Ordinance 9817 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 9917.
Declaring the necessity and intent to file an appropriation action to appropriate a fee simple interest in certain real property owned by Victoria L. Valenti for the Elm Street Grade Separation Project, and authorizing the law director to file an appropriation petition therefore.
Mr. President,
Counselor Adams.
I move that ordinance 99-17 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 99-17 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crayer?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 99-17 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 117.
Authorizing the issuance of a notice of intent to acquire a fee simple interest in certain real property owned by JFM Builders, Inc. for the purpose of constructing an educational facility by Rhodes State College.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that ordinance 117 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 117 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crayer?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 117 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 101-17.
Authorizing the issuance of a notice of intent to acquire a fee simple interest in certain real property owned by Eleanor Lucille Baker for the purpose of constructing an educational facility by Rhodes State College.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that ordinance 101-17 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 101-17 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crayer?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 101-17 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 102-17.
Authorizing the issuance of a notice of intent to acquire a fee simple interest in certain real property owned by Eleanor Lucille Baker, Jason Cleaves, and Wesley F. Cleaves for the purpose of constructing an educational facility by Rhodes State College.
Mr. President,
Counselor McLean.
I move that ordinance 102-17 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 102-17 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? Although, we'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crayer?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 102-17 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Ordinance 103-17.
Establishing the positions and classifications hereinafter set forth and fixing the salary and compensation of such positions and classifications, repealing existing inconsistent ordinances as herein described.
Mr. President,
Counselor Glenn.
I move that ordinance 103-17 be passed on its first reading.
Second.
The motion and the second is to pass ordinance 103-17 on its first reading. Is there any discussion? We'll have the clerk call the roll.
Counselor Lowe?
Yes.
Counselor Crayer?
Yes.
Counselor Adams?
Yes.
Counselor Glenn?
Yes.
Counselor Miles?
Yes.
Counselor Nixon?
Yes.
Counselor Gordon?
Yes.
Counselor McLean?
Yes.
Ordinance 103-17 has been passed on its first reading by an 8-0 vote. Next is miscellaneous business. Counselor Lowe.
Thank you, thank you. When I first got into council this evening, Ms. Adams handed me a reminder. What she didn't know is I'm on my 9th day of no bread, no pop, no pasta, no rice, no sugar.
That's pretty awesome.
And you're smiling?
Then she hands me a Lima Farmers Market.
Read that off, huh?
So it takes place May the 23rd to October the 17th, so I guess I'll be a good customer. This is Tuesdays from 3 to 6:30 p.m. And this will be on the corner of Market and Main, and I believe it's right in front of the Civic Center in their plaza that they have right there. So I may see you there. And the second thing is I am delighted to see the Davenport family here tonight and some seats filled. And I was thinking on the way here, I never spoke to William Davenport, but he spoke to me. And I can remember one Sunday, me and Greg Johnson Daryl Falcon and Dexter Graham was cutting the fool at church service, and he turned around and looked and said, "You know better." And that was it. That was it. You straightened up automatic, and he had a voice that you just had to listen to. And I appreciated that. At the time I didn't, but now I do. But I want to say also to the family, so that you know, I supported this 1,000%. I had my own personal ideas where the Dominion Gas is building. I requested that new street be named after him. I thought it would be a delight for the kids coming from Lima Senior to see a road or the little way that they have over there named Davenport Drive. And I pressed for that, and I said it in a couple meetings. But when Chief came with this idea, I was glad to see that it was on the outside and not just a monument inside. I think everybody driving by should inquire who he was and what he did. So I'm proud of this. I'm still going to keep pushing Dominion Gas. But I am very proud of this, and you should be too. And thank you for sharing him with Lima. Thank you. That's it.
Thank you, Councilor Lowe. Councilor Craig?
Thank you, Mr. President. Just a few things tonight. We had our first citywide pride over the weekend. There are still 3 more weekends to go, and that first weekend is always exciting to see the things that people bring to dispose of. We had some really good turnout. Many dumpsters were used in our location on Spring Street. So I'd just like to say thank you to everyone who's involved in that, every person who came out to volunteer, every organization that was a part of that. It's a big project, but it is a much-needed project. And it's whoever came up with this idea many years ago, I owe them, because I feel grateful that we have an opportunity to come together as a community to clean up, but to volunteer to help our neighbors, get rid of things that they've been holding on to for some time. So again, if you also have things you would like to get rid of, there are 3 more weekends of Citywide Pride, and you can follow up with that at the city website. And then the last thing, in this last week, I have, my heart was really broken. I woke up a couple of days ago and saw that Monica Pugsley had passed away.
That's right.
And I was heartbroken, so I would like to send my condolences to the fire department family, but to Warren and his family. She was a wonderful lady. I didn't necessarily know her personally, but I did get to know her through the lives of others and through her husband, and so my condolences for that. And that is all, Mr. President. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Craig. Councilor Adams?
Thank you, Mr. President. Concerning the Citywide Pride, this coming weekend, the 13th, there's 2 locations. Last weekend we had 4, and we're down to 2 for next weekend, the 13th. The first one is at iHeartMedia at 667 West Market Street. And the next one is at Urban Voice Lima is the sponsor, and that's going to be located at 808 East Hope Street. So hopefully everyone will catch those addresses, 667 West Market Street and 808 Hope Street, starting at 9 o'clock till noon. Bring proof of residency, a utility bill, driver's license, something that shows your address. Also, I'd like to make mention, because this is going to happen before our next council meeting, Friday, May 19th at 10 a.m., the Blue Caboose Tourist Information Center will be opening for the season. I've attended their openings off and on over the years. I have visited the Caboose once it is open. They have postcards there of Lima, some vintage, some newer ones, lapel pins. They have a wood toy train engine. If you haven't visited this Caboose, which is just off of I-75 behind the hotels on the east side, please take some time to stop in there. If you'd like to volunteer, please inquire when you do. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Adams. Councilor Glenn?
Yeah, I got a few minutes here. I want to thank the code enforcement for taking a lot of calls there. We got a lot of grass coming out. And I'd like to thank the car dealership person in Bob Hammond, thank you so much for what you're doing. You've been taking a lot of calls in there. People, it's a process we got to go through. It's not that Mr. Hammond can come out and take the call right away. You got to give him a notice and give him opportunity to get that done. And I appreciate it so much. The group of guys that helped me out with that house that we got done this past weekend, thank you guys so much on that. I know this house been there for a long time, and it's just like we talked about, there's a landlord that live out of town, and I understand that they got some notice out on him, but his family had a graduation ready to come up, so we want to make sure we get it done. That's what good neighbors all about. That's what we're going to continue doing in the 6th Ward. We're going to keep helping each other out and making it happen, because it's going to take all of us to work in our community. Well, congratulations to Mayor, and congratulations to Jesse. Good job, guys, and good luck to both of you guys. And we're going to continue. And Monica Pusley, that hurt so bad there. She's a pioneer in our community, her husband and her son, her kids, though. So let's keep that family in prayer. And Davenport family, I'm so excited for this day. The day is a special day today, but when we get it done, it's going to be even special. And I know when Jesse was going around getting his picture up on the wall, Cupies, just collecting money. I love that. I didn't get to meet Mr. Davenport, but my parents tell me good things about him, though. So be happy for that. Administration, thank you guys so much. And also Chief Mark, who spearheaded this. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Glenn. Councilor Miles?
Thank you, Mr. President. The Westgate Neighborhood Association will have their regular monthly meeting on Sunday, May 21st at the Chamberlain Huckabee Funeral Home on Cable Road. The speaker for this month will be Leanne Shea from the LPD here, and she will be talking about safeguards against identity theft. Also, Jason Garlock from the Lima Police Department will also be in attendance. So those of you who want to come out and just be a part of the session, if you want to have a nice meal, come at 6. But if you want to just come for the speaker, you can come at 6:30. All are welcome. Also, the Westgate Neighborhood Association, our citywide Pride Day is May 20th, and it will be from 9 to noon at the Superior Credit Union on Allentown Road. Again, bring any form of identity, just make sure that you are a resident, and come out and just be a part of bringing out stuff that you have accumulated, stuff you want to get rid of. We will be manning that particular dumpster site here, so it'll give us a chance. I always enjoy working there. It gives us a chance to meet people in the neighborhood and have conversations with them. So again, I will be at that site here, just kind of helping, really help, but not really help. We normally get the individuals, juveniles from juvenile court. They come out because some of them have to do community service, and so most of the time we have the individuals come there, and they're usually the one that actually does the helping. We're just there just to help them and make sure they're doing what they should be doing here. But again, come out if you want to get rid of things in your house. Just come out and just make sure you bring some form of identification here. I also want to send my condolences, my public condolences to Warren and his family on the loss of Monica. Monica was a great mentor to a lot of young people in our community, and she was really making a difference in the community, working with our young people, the young ladies especially, and she was involved at the Lima City schools as a mentor and just a lot of different programs. And so many girls, their lives have changed, have been greatly impacted by Monica and what she has done in the community. And so my heart goes out to that family, for Warren and for his son, who also works for the fire department here. For those who are interested in for the viewing, it will be at the Lima Community Church on Cole Street on Thursday, 2 to 4 and 6 to 8. The family will be present, and then the actual funeral will be on Friday at noon, again at Lima Community Church here. So again, just sending out your love, and if you know Warren and his family, just make sure you just express love, and we truly grieve for that family. Monica was only 47 years old, but she will be greatly missed in this community for volunteering and for working with the young people, and she made a tremendous impact on a lot of lives, of young people's lives here. So again, our condolences to that family there. Finally, I want to just say congratulations to some Ohio State graduates here. 2 young men who I was part of a mentoring program that we had at the Lima YMCA. Used to be a volunteer there, and these young men, they were part of our group when they were freshmen and sophomores, and they wanted to go to college here. And to be truthfully, I really didn't believe in them because I knew their history, I knew their family situation. But I am glad to say that both of these individuals graduated from college this weekend, and I am so happy for them. One kid I lost track of and didn't know where he was at because he was going through a lot of turmoil in his family. And when I got the word this past weekend that Quentin graduated, it was like, wow. I can't believe that he made it. And so, again, it just goes to show that we never lose faith in our young people. What we think may be impossible, they can achieve. And so to Quentin and to Daquan, I say, congratulations. I'm so proud of you for sticking with it in the midst of a lot of turmoil, family situations. These two individuals made it. Daquan told me the other day here, he says, Mrs. Miles, he says, I'm coming back to Lima. He says, I want to make a difference in this community. He says, I want to let other young men know that they can do what I did, And so, again, I'm very proud of these young people, and I just want to say it publicly that we never, never give up on our young people. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor Miles. Councilor Gordon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to remind people and invite folks out to the Lima Stadium Park dedication on Sunday, May 21st from 2 to 4. It's a big event. Actually, Councilor Lowe's High Octane will be playing along with LCC, Lima Senior Bands. It'll be a fun time. So I'd like to see as many people get out there and have a good time. Next, on this past Saturday, Councilor McLean and myself
Got our hands dirty.
got our hands dirty. Gordon, he likes that stuff. We worked at the neighborhood cleanup, and it was a fun time. And so we enjoyed it, and I encourage people to get involved with the neighborhood associations and do this kind of thing. I mean, it brings great fellowship. And so again, it's just something that I really enjoyed, and I'd like to see more people come out. And the last thing, which might surprise everybody, but I want to remind people to be good to each other. Thank you.
Thank you, Councilor Gordon. Councilor McLean.
Thank you, Mr. President, and to elaborate a little more on our cleanup, it doesn't matter if you've got a truckload or 2 truckloads or 3 truckloads. As long as you make it that time frame, bring it on. Bring it on. We had people coming with a truck, leave, come back a little while later with another truckload. So clean up, help your neighbors, bring it out, throw it away. It's all going to help our city. I can't imagine how many tons of trash was taken out of the city over the years. Just a moment for graduation. We talk about our seniors, not just in college, but our kids that are graduating from high school. And to give them a chance to go to higher education is phenomenal. I mean, we're in that season. We've got a lot of schools in the next few weeks that are going to be having those graduation parties. You're going to see them all around. So, that's the core of our city, our youth. Our youth is the core. And we need to keep them as many as we can here. Mm-hmm. And we need to foster them and make sure that they have a path. So I want to congratulate every one of them, seniors in high school, seniors in college. And one other thing to talk about is we have a very important day coming up. It's our Mother's Day.
That's right.
Where would you be? Just think about it. Mothers can be alive or they can be dead. But think about them. Mm-hmm. I think about my mom. She passed away a long time ago, but I think about her a lot. And it gets even worse when Mother's Day comes around. But the ones that are alive, you better appreciate.
Thanks.
It's very, very hard to ever get them back.
That's right.
You'll never get them back. So appreciate them, spend time with them. This is their special day. Let them know you love them, and enjoy a Mother's Day with them if you would. Thank you, Mr. President.
Thank you, Councilor McLean. I need to announce a Council of the Whole meeting on Monday, May 15th at 6:30 p.m. The topic, just so everybody else knows, is an item that has been in Council's Committee of the Whole for several months, and it's regarding the electrical aggregation program. We started this discussion, and we had to wait for some other information to get straightened out and cleared up. That information is now ready, and Bill Bradish will be here to bring us up to speed on that. That committee meeting, again, is Monday, May 15th at 6:30 PM in these chambers. So, and that's all I have.
Mr. President,
Councilor Adams.
I move that council adjourn until May 22nd at 7 PM in these chambers.
Second.
Motion second is the Lima City Council will adjourn until May 22nd at 7 PM in these chambers. Is there any discussion on the motion? All those in favor of the motion signify by saying aye. Aye. Those opposed, the motion carries, and we are adjourned.